Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to episode number 4 of the Hubdate. As always, if you've got anything to say in regards to this show, do use the hashtag the Hubdate. We read everything that you send us. We love getting the community's kind of overall perspective of what we talk about. This week, we've got a star-studded lineup full of guests and topics and just all sorts to talk about. We're talking PlayStation 4, Sony, and whether or not Sony are actually going to have a marketing deal with Activision, and kind of look at it hypothetically and what it will actually mean for the community going forward. Obviously, there's quite a lot to discuss there. I'm joined by my friend here, Laws. If you want to say hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well. And obviously, we're going to be discussing it. Laws was actually meant to be with me throughout the whole of the episode. We're going to be talking with Melon, a pro player, Mello, who's obviously at Deserto, and then we're going to finish it off by talking to Neil, who is obviously I think he's like marketing and community manager for Epsi on Esports. But sadly, you're not going to be with me for the whole stint. But we're going to start off by talking about some of the rumours that have come about that kind of suggest that Sony do actually have a marketing deal, and I think the first thing I wanted to kind of ask you is obviously, what would you think if Sony did get the marketing deal from you as a standpoint, as an amateur team owner, if I'm not mistaken? How would it impact you? Because obviously your team at the moment plays on Xbox One. You have multiple teams. You have a boys and a female team. So from your standpoint, say all of a sudden, come Black Ops 3, the scene switches to Sony and PlayStation 4. What impacts is that going to have for your organisation?
Well, just quickly, I wanted to add that our boys team indeed did leave after Anisend.
Okay, I did not know about that.
Yeah.
But you still obviously the girls team, and hopefully you'll pick up another boys team in the coming future, obviously.
Yeah. Well, firstly, it's a massive deal for Sony, obviously. They're going to be picking up a marketing deal with the biggest first-person shooter, there is. I think as a whole, it is bigger than Counter-Strike, who obviously is another first-person shooter. Yeah. And, it's just based on it's pick up and play, Call of Duty is it's very easy to play, obviously at kind of public game level. Let's just kind of forget about esports for now. But in terms of how it will affect, the amateur community, people are now going to have to buy another console, and some people rely on kind of Christmas or their birthday to who are able to buy the console. And I can see the community kind of getting a bit annoyed with it, because they're going to have to spend another £300-400 on another console that they primarily bought to play COD Esports. And I just don't think people are going to be happy about that. And I think it's going to be a learning curve also, because people are going to have to get used to the new controllers. And, it's going to be kind of a totally different game on that console.
Interesting. I mean, as you said, there's a lot to it. It's not just a matter of switching over. I mean, you've got to look at it from an orgs perspective, not just an org that has teams, an org that actually hosts LAN events. They're going to have a bunch of Xboxes, and then all of a sudden they're going to need PlayStations. Now, I know Am2 Pro recently bought a load of Xboxes. If the scene switches over, do they switch over as well? Pro Asylum, they're coming into the scene. If they're going to hold Xbox LANs in Advanced Warfare, do they then switch over? Gfinity, I think they could probably manage it a bit better with the kind of the money they're getting in. But it's a massive change. Now, I know a lot of people have said they've done it before. Back in Call of Duty 4, the scene was on PC. We then switched to Xbox 360 or something, I think it was. We then, Black Ops 1, we're on PlayStation 3, and then we switched back. But then I think what a lot of people have to realise is the scene is a lot bigger than what it was then. It's a lot harder for the whole scene to just suddenly switching over. That's like asking CSGO players, say they play on PC at the moment. Say all of a sudden they're no longer allowed to play on PC for whatever reason, and they have to they have to switch to a console version. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's crazy. So I think it's something really to consider. We're going to actually talk about some of the rumours that have actually come out and you may know about. So the first rumour for me is the fact that Treyarch, their showcase kind of studio where the 10 YouTubers that got a chance to play the game were at, actually played the game on PlayStation 4 in the picture that was shown on Twitter. Hopefully I'll put it on screen for you guys. all along the side there was side stations, and in the middle there was some chairs as well, and all the side stations had PlayStation 4s. What do you make of this? Is this kind of suggesting that the scene may be switching? I mean, I guess we can be a bit controversial here, because obviously in the past, from our knowledge, it's been Xboxes where it's been PlayStations.
Yeah, now that there's PlayStation 4s obviously at their showcase where, you know, these massive YouTubers like T Martin are testing out the game, it's a clear indication that they are indeed sealing off this marketing deal with Sony. And, you know, it's kind of worrying for me personally, because, you know, I do love the Microsoft brand with Call of Duty, and I think they've done a fantastic job, you know, and I think they had quite a solidified relationship. But yeah, it's definitely a clear indicator that Activision is, you know, going to solidify this deal with Sony. And also these big YouTubers like T Martin and Ali A, who did test the game, they're going to be talking about it now, and I think they will obviously have the inside information that Sony will now be partnered with Activision in this deal. But it does hurt me personally as someone in esports, because now I'm going to have to witness loads of these people on Twitter, you know, crying about it and, you know, talking about it. They're going to be angry because they're going to have to again spend their money on a new console.
Yeah, I mean, what you said about, sorry to interrupt, what you said about, you know, Xbox filtering in quite a lot, what I think people are unaware of. We'll touch on that in a second, but, you know, Treyarch won't just suddenly switch consoles. They won't just be like, oh, let's put PlayStation 4s in our showcase this time. You know, it all comes down to money. It all comes down to, you know, marketing deals and stuff. You know, they don't just switch over for the sake of it. You know, there has to be some real kind of emphasis and reasoning behind it. And I really do agree with you in thinking that this suggests that the scene is switching over. Just to touch on what you were saying on obviously how Xbox and Microsoft have done a really, really good job for Activision and Call of Duty Esports. You know, obviously they have the marketing deal to get the DLC a month earlier than PlayStation and PC. We all know about that. That's, you know, something that makes having an Xbox an asset rather than, you know, PlayStation and PC. You know, it's all about driving more people to your console and your platform. We understand that, but not only have they done that, they've catered towards the esports scene. You know, they put on this $1 million tournament for the last 3 years. It's rumored, nothing's been official, but that the contract comes to an end at the end of Advanced Warfare, or is coming to an end. And obviously the contract probably entails the fact that all events have to be on Xbox. That's pretty, apparent. Obviously, if you're Xbox, you're going to want that to be the case, because if you see pro players playing on an Xbox, you're going to want to go and buy an Xbox. If the scene is on Xbox, you're going to want to buy an Xbox, because that's where all the money's at. In no way is it untrue. That's where the money's at. There is a PlayStation 4 kind of community. It's not the biggest, but obviously, for the most part, the majority of Call of Duty competitive players, I'm not talking about players in general, we'll come on to talk about that in later, but for competitive players, the majority are on the PlayStation 4 side of things. So it's an interesting point. I mean, what do you make of the rumours that Sony want to make films out of Call of Duty?
Oh, I saw that on Twitter, and I was quite surprised by it. And again, it's just an indication of, you know, this kind of deal going on with Sony and Activision. I know that Halo, it was called Forward Unto Dawn, they had a film based on Halo 4. Yeah. Personally, I wouldn't really be interested in watching a film based on Call of Duty. I don't think it's, you know, what are you going to do it on? Are you going to do it on the Modern Warfare series? Are you going to do it on the Black Ops series? You know?
Yeah, I mean, do they do it? Yeah, do they do it now? I mean, I'm not going to lie, I feel like the Black Ops 3 storyline, or what it's believed to be, is actually a really interesting thing, and it's very relatable to modern day, because obviously, you know, technology is getting more and more advanced, and if we do get to a point where we can't control our technology and we end up turning into, you know, weapons of mass destruction, like super soldiers, as they're, you know, emphasizing, it's quite an interesting point. But you know, it's very apparent that Sony are in a little bit of financial trouble. If you've read some of the stories and rumours, they're not financially stable, should we say. They're doing well as an organisation, but they're, you know, maybe not doing so great on the money front. And obviously, them, if they were to pick up this marketing deal with Activision, you know, making films out of Call of Duty would not only benefit Activision as, you know, getting more publicity and more people into Call of Duty and, you know, different parts of the franchise, but also benefit Sony in the fact that if they make a film out of it, they can obviously make revenue and money off of that.
Yeah. I think that if they obviously get this deal, Sony and Activision deal, then Sony are going to sell a lot more copies of the game. Not necessarily because people buy the new console, but people who maybe didn't even buy Advanced Warfare on PlayStation are now definitely going to be interested in buying it on PlayStation 4 with Black Ops 3.
Yeah.
Just going back to what you said about the event companies and stuff, we know that Gfinity are easily going to be able to pay off this kind of money for PlayStation 4s. You know, they're a very big events company, one of the biggest in Europe. I wasn't going to say the biggest because obviously ESL are the biggest in Europe.
Obviously.
But we've got to look at people like maybe AmtoPro and Pro Asylum. Obviously, they have big budgets as well, but are they going to be able to buy, 100 plus PlayStation 4s? I personally don't think so. And that's going to be a shame for all of competitive players, because we might see these kind of AmtoPros and Pro Asylums not hosting events anymore, or maybe taking a new route to another game. They might go to CSGO or start doing Halo, for instance. So it'd be a big shame to see these kind of people bringing us tournaments on like a termly basis to just suddenly stop and move into another game.
Yeah, I agree with everything you say. I think the real part of the competitive community that will suffer is the amateur scene. It's because obviously, I mean, for you guys that are watching this, I've actually already recorded a bit with Grumpy Gamer O'Neill from Epsilon. We had to obviously record in different times because some people weren't available, and I spoke to him. You'll see it at the end of this video, and he was talking about how, for the likes of Epsilon, they were actually they'd be okay. I said, okay, let's say all of a sudden PlayStation 4 is the main console. How would this actually affect you as an organization? And the simple thing he said was it wouldn't, because as an organization, they have sponsors and they have the financial backing to obviously afford to go out and buy PlayStation 4s. They've got Scuff Gaming as a sponsor to get Scuff for PlayStations, etc. But as you say, for the amateur scene, going out and buying a PlayStation is not something that you can just go out and do. They don't have that exposable income that maybe some of the bigger organizations have. And you talk about, Pro Asylum and AmtoPro, and it leads to the question that I'm going to ask you now of, will we see a competitive community where it's split half and half, where, the fact that AmtoPro and, say, Pro Asylum are mainly on Xbox, do they stay on Xbox? And do we see then the likes of the bigger organizations like Gfinity, MLG switch over to PlayStation 4?
We're not going to see a split community just based on the fact that when we see society, we always go to the trend and where it's at.
That's very true.
I can't see a split community because apart from AmtoPro, which was like the biggest open UK event in over a year, we normally have been getting for the last 3 events maybe like 30 teams, and if there's a split community, a 10 teams going to come up to our only Xbox event? It would be pointless.
That's a good point. I mean, so what do these amateur organisations do then? Have you formulated anything that we can maybe do? I mean, from my instance, I really feel for them because I don't know what they can do. I don't know if they've got the investment to buy PlayStation 4s. And the more worrying thing is, I don't know where they sell their Xboxes to, because the only real place they can sell them to is Halo. But Halo at the moment isn't really a thing over here in the UK. And over in America, obviously, you've got the Halo Championship Series that probably don't need them. So it's like, where do you sell the Xboxes? Where do MLG sell the thousands of Xboxes they have? It's like, not only have they got to fork out for a new console, it's like almost like it's going to be really hard to sell on all these used Xboxes. They're going to have to like sell them individually, if anything.
I think with MLG, they'll have private contacts to obviously buy in bulk and things like that. I think they'll have the contacts to easily go and sell their Xboxes because they must have done it before back on like PlayStation 3.
That's true. But then again, they probably didn't have as many back then, I would say.
Yeah,
but
of course. But
I understand.
For someone like Pro Asylum, where did they go? Did they just sell a bunch? I know that the owner of AmtoPro has contacts within retail stores, so like independent game retail stores. I know he has them kind of contacts, so that might be a possibility. But I'm not. I don't specialize in that kind of business, so I wouldn't really know, obviously. But
I think neither of us do really, so we can't really predict what they're going to do. But just kind of move things on, because this is going to be a really long episode, and we're already 15 minutes in. Last couple of questions I wanted to ask you is, first of all, what would you say is going to be? Actually, let me word this differently. Obviously, with let's say hypothetically the scene did switch over to PlayStation 4. Do you think we'll see a decline in Call of Duty competitive? And then just to end it out, realistically, is it viable for the scene to switch over to PlayStation 4? Last two questions.
All right. So, sorry, can you just repeat the first one?
The first one is, are we going to see a decline in the competitive community if it does switch over? And the second one is this a realistically going to happen?
I think at the start we'll see a decline because people aren't just going to be able to, go outside to their back gardens and pull money off a tree. Instantly we're going to see a decline because only a portion will be able to buy these PlayStation 4s. But I think over an amount of time, like in a year, it's like, when we had to switch from 360 to Xbox One, when, one of the, people gradually, they gradually started playing on Xbox One a bit more.
We need kind of a transition period where we have
some
of both
period.
Events, and then we say by this point we are switching. So they give a time period for maybe amateur teams to get themselves organised and be like, right, by this point we need PS4s, we need you scrimming on this platform, yada yada yada. We need scuff gaming controllers, etc. etc.
I can only see I can only see it going as far as the first event on Black Ops 3 for some of the more independent event organisations like Pro Asylum and Amta Pro, because they're going to be spending some very, very big money on getting these consoles, and they might not be able to put out a very good event if they can only buy about 50 consoles, because then people are just going to be limited.
Yeah. Although, as you said, I mean, the average turnout for EU events at the moment is probably between like 30 and 60 teams, maybe, depending on the profile of them. So, I mean, they could technically do it with maybe like 4 stations, but then again, for every station you need 8 consoles. So it should be interesting. Just to end it out though, do you think this is going to happen? Basically, I want to know.
From the information I have gathered and from what you've told me about in the showcase, I think the deal's already been sealed and waiting for an announcement. If they really did have a renewal deal with Microsoft, they would not be using PlayStation 4s at a showcase for these very, very high-profile YouTubers to be talking about and kind of playing a game. And I think it's a shame that this move is likely to happen, because I think that Microsoft and Activision have had quite a good relationship, and for me as a consumer of someone who had Xbox 360 and Xbox One, I primarily bought the Xbox One for Call of Duty, as I kind of work within the scene.
I mean, I've spoken to different areas of the community, and they all echo what you say. They bought an Xbox because that's where the scene's at. They're going to be really annoyed if the scene switches over. But thank you, my friend, for your input. It's much appreciated. Okay, so for the next section of the show, we brought on Melon, who is a player for Team Infused, also known as John. Do you want to say hello, pal?
Hi, my name is John Ogborn and I play for Team Infused.
There we go. We wanted to bring John on because basically, obviously, if there was to be a transition from Xbox to PlayStation, it's obviously going to affect the player. The player is the one at the end of the day that plays the console. And if they have to switch, obviously, it's going to have a dramatic effect on how they play and, what they're going to do in the future coming. So, from your perspective, can you just run down, what would be the biggest kind of change you would have to do in terms of if the scene did switch over to PlayStation, in terms of, costs, what you'd have to buy, and anything you'd have to implement?
Well, if we did have to switch over to PS4, you would obviously buy the actual PS4, the console, a PS4 scuff. What else would you need?
Maybe an adapter for, because I think if I'm not mistaken, the new Astros, they have like an adapter for Xbox, and maybe new headset as well. I mean, none of these things are cheap at the end of the day. PlayStation's going to set you back about £250, and that's probably second hand. Scuff gaming controllers are ridiculously expensive. I mean, from your standpoint, do you get any help from Team Infused or any teams you've been in the past in terms of getting equipment you need if say something breaks?
Well, yeah, actually, Team Infused is probably the best organisation I've been in.
Okay.
And I've only been in a few orgs, but yeah, Team Infuse is definitely the best one. I've got an Astro backpack from them. I've got a pair of headset from them, the Astro headset, and I've got about 2 scuffs from them. So yeah, It's mostly all paid for them by them, to be honest. Well, funded by them.
Team Infuse as an organisation have been able to help you out a bit, and obviously, hypothetically, if there was a change over to the PlayStation side of things, potentially they could help you with some of the costs if you maybe couldn't afford it. So, but obviously. Let's just talk from an amateur perspective for a second, because I'm sure you've been there at some stage. You know, everyone starts out as an amateur at the end of the day, on the struggle to try and get everything you need. And if you're starting out and you have absolutely nothing, you got to think you got to buy. If we were to change over, you got to buy a PlayStation, £250 right there. Pair of Astros, they're going to set you back over £100 easily. Then you've got obviously a SCUF controller. It's very evident that. In Advanced Warfare, you know, the movement and the button layout, you really do need a SCUF to play at the highest level. So there's a lot of stuff that obviously comes into it. If we were to switch over, what do you think would be kind of the overall consensus? Do you think there'd be a lot of kind of outrage from the community? Because obviously, you know, we've switched over in the past. You know, back in Call of Duty 4, we had the switch over from I think we were at PC on the time, then we switched over to console. Black Ops 1, we switched to PS3 and then back to Xbox. But obviously the scene was a lot smaller then, so obviously if the scene, say, was to switch in Black Ops 3, do you think the general consensus of the community would be good or bad?
I personally think it would be actually good, because it would be joining another community, so it brings so many more, I say, players and fans to the community. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm with you, because obviously I spoke about this to Laws at the start of the show, and we were talking about how, you know, the majority of players at the moment are on the Xbox side of things because that's where the money's at. You know, they're not idiots. You know, you're going to be on the Xbox side of things because it's where most of the big organisations are, and it's obviously where, you know, you're going to want to play, because it's where you basically make your name for yourself. You know, PlayStation has their own kind of community, but it's nowhere near as big as what we see on the Xbox side of things. So you know, it's going to be challenging, to say the least, if obviously we do see a switch over. Would you say, do you think we could maybe see potentially a split community? Do you think maybe because some organisations have, you know, forked out for a lot of Xboxes, that, you know, some organisations may stay on the Xbox side of things and host tournaments because they just can't afford the change?
Well, to be honest, if they did move over, I reckon it should just be a whole community. It'd be just so much more better, and the organisations and stuff should just stick together, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I'm with you. So obviously, if the main console switches over, everyone else should basically switch over, you're saying?
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
But do you realistically think that will happen? Because obviously, you know, the likes of Am2 Pro, Pro Asylum, some of these maybe smaller events, you know, I know Am2 Pro recently forked out on quite a lot of Xboxes, and then if, you know, Activision turn around and say, oh, now our lead console is PlayStation 4, we want you all to, you know, play on PlayStation 4, are they realistically going to be able to afford that change?
Yeah, I guess that would cost quite a lot of money to fork out so many PS4s to a community and to all the players that are competing at the event. It'd be quite annoying, but I guess if they want to make money, then they're going to have to fork out the money and actually pay for all them consoles.
Because, I mean, as you say, obviously the majority of the scene will move over, and obviously to get the publicity, to get the people through the door, you need to, you know, be attracting the bigger teams, because that's when obviously you get kind of the publicity from them tweeting out saying, oh, I'm attending so-and-so event, get your tickets, and team passes here, there and everywhere. So I think it's going to be really interesting
100%.
If this is actually a thing that's happened. I mean, we talked earlier in the show about how there's some rumours, some things that suggest that Sony may be the next title, but obviously it's all speculation. Until anything is actually confirmed, we don't know what will actually happen. For yourself, would you rather stay on Xbox, or would you like the change?
Right, I've only actually I've played obviously PS2 and PS1 when I was younger.
Everyone's played PlayStation 2. Yeah, that's like the god game.
Yeah,
or god console.
I actually haven't played the newer gen console like PS3 and PS4. I've played it maybe once, but not like properly, if you know what I mean. I've always played with Xboxes and stuff, and but I wouldn't be too bothered actually. I'd like to play on a PS4 actually.
You would embrace the change and kind of just go with the flow, if you will. Yeah.
Because I've heard actually a few advantages of it actually. Apparently the bow hasn't been tampered with on the console. Apparently people have said that they've got better graphics on the console, and but there is a few disadvantages. So on the Xbox you have to use Skype to talk to your teammates, really. while we're playing, but that's what most teams do.
Yeah,
and you have to have a computer with that, of course. But on PlayStation, you can go into parties, can't you, and talk to your teammates about that?
Yeah. So in a way, going over to PlayStation 4 brings a couple of additional features that you as a team will be able to incorporate. Oh, that's very interesting. That's nice to hear, because I think from getting a or consensus from the community, a lot of people have said they don't want the change, because obviously a lot of people have forked out money and time spent working to earn up these kind of things that you need to compete on Xbox, and obviously if then the scene switches over, it's kind of all that hard work gone down the drain. Do you think any pro players or players in general would be scared about the change, because obviously the controller's a little bit different? Do you think that would maybe put anyone off a bit?
No, not really, to be honest, because most of the pro players on the Xbox scene, they've obviously played for 7 or 8 years, quite a long time.
So they're just good with a controller.
Yeah, they'll just be good with a controller. That's all, and that's it.
Interesting.
It'll probably take them give it about a month, and they'll be fine with it. To be honest,
they'll already be at the top of the leaderboards.
Sure.
I completely agree with you. I mean, it may be a longer process for some teams than others, because obviously some people adapt quicker than others, but overall I don't think we're going to see too much struggle. We're not going to see a top tier player just suddenly drop down to the lower ranks. So last thing I kind of wanted to ask you is obviously if the scene did switch over, is there anything, if Sony did get the marketing deal, is there anything they can do as a company in promoting Call of Duty esports more? Obviously Xbox have done a phenomenal job. Not only do they have the early release for DLC for themselves, but they've also obviously put on this $1 million tournament for the last 3 years. They've promoted Call of Duty esports and etc. etc. So is there anything that Sony can do to better that in your eyes?
I reckon Sony could actually. I think they should. So with the £1 million tournament going on every year, I think they should split that into a 250 grand prize, if you know what I mean, and make it over 3 tournaments a year.
I'm with you. Yeah.
So it'd be more.
Yeah. So instead of having that massive climax to COD Champs and then just a complete drop in enthusiasm around it, instead of having that, do loads of smaller tournaments, but still 250 grand is a lot of money.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. And it would give more teams. So, like, say Optic at COD Champs, they were the best team around at that time. Like, they're still the best team now, but they were the best team going into that, and they were the favourites to win that tournament. But they came 7th, sorry, and so it's just gone now. They can't win that again. But like, say if there was 3 more tournaments, they could win them other 2 tournaments, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, MWG are putting on a 250k tournament at the end of the year, and there's rumours that you may be able to add to the prize pool through, crowd funding, etc. But I do agree with you. I feel like that'd be a better way of distributing it. Obviously, would you agree with me in saying that if they were just to put on $1 million tournament, it needs to be at the end of the year? Because obviously this year and for the last 3 years, it's been in March. What may be good for their timing, but for Call of Duty fans, you have it in the middle of the year, and then it's like, well, what have we got to look forward to now?
Yeah, I guess. While doing that tournament, it's so early into the game, there's so many rules that have not been
we're still changing
changed.
the game. Like, obviously, there was a patch just a couple of days ago that changed the ASM1 that could have completely changed, the whole of COD Champs. It's just like last year with Ghost. We had an MTAR meta leading up to COD Champs, and then all of a sudden this Vector meta came out of nowhere, and it's just like it's a completely different game.
Yeah, like what's good, over the past couple of days, people have been agreeing to no overkill, IMR, danger close, shotgun,
the gentleman's rules,
and it's changing the entire game.
Interesting, yeah.
So at the end of the year, it could make the game so much more better and more better to spectate the game, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. Obviously, we don't really get to see the game kind of fully developed, if you will, until the end of its season, because obviously we keep changing things. This needs changing, this needs buffing, etc., etc. And as you say, at the moment we're in the kind of the transition phase of changing things like overkill, etc. So it's going to be interesting to see what Sony do. It's going to be, I think, a massive disappointment from everyone's perspective if they don't kind of pick up the reins of what Xbox have been doing, or even better what Xbox have been doing. But going forward, it's going to be really interesting. Thank you, John, for coming on. I really do appreciate it. We really wanted to get a pro player's perspective of what you would think of the change, and it's really insightful. So really, thank you for coming on. And obviously, I think you've just been announced to be competing at Gfinity in 2 weekends, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I cannot wait for that event. Actually, I'm so happy we got invited.
It's like I look at it like a mini COD champs, because obviously you've got Mind Freak come in. You've got a bunch of American teams. You've got French teams. You've got Spanish teams. So it's gonna be really awesome. But we wish you all the best. Then next up, we're gonna be talking to Melon or Chris from Deserto. So we'll be back right in a sec. So for the next part of the show, guys, I'm joined by a special guest in the form of Chris, actually a director at Deserto. You may know him. If you want to say hello, pal.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm very well. How are yourself?
Yeah, very good.
Very good. Chris obviously has been around the scene for a very, very long time. You've probably seen him, across numerous Call of Duty titles. He does interview. He's always at events, etc., etc. So I thought he'd be a really good guest to get on and actually talk about whether or not there'd be a dramatic kind of outroar if the scene did switch over, and kind of some of the effects. And I think Chris has got quite a few ideas in his mind to give us all. So I think the first place I wanted to kind of start off with is obviously if we were to switch over, how do you think the community would take it? Because I spoke to Melon just a few minutes ago, and he honestly feels as if he would welcome it, and most pro players would, because obviously although there's you're switching over consoles, it's still console FPS. It's not like you're asking someone to switch from a console to a PC. So how do you think the general community would react to this?
I would probably agree with Melon. Maybe not perhaps open arms, but I think people would just kind of get on with it. I mean, at the end of the day, you just have to look at how the game has gone in general. I mean, if you look back to Black Ops 2, when we always used to forge our own rule sets, and then one day Treyarch turned around to us and basically said, "Well, guess what? You're not doing that anymore. This is what you're playing. Like it or lump it, because we're putting the money in." It was said in a slightly nicer way than that, but it was kind of like, this is how it's going down, and people kind of got on with it. And I think this is a similar situation, especially for the top players. If there's money on the line, it's quite an expensive initial outlay, 200, 300 quid for a new console. But you get over that, and I think, parallels can definitely be run to FIFA, where 1 week you'll be playing on Xbox, 1 week you'll be playing on PlayStation.
I was going to actually bring that up, because obviously, although it's it's not a first-person shooter, it's still very, very interlinkable. But we'll come on to that in a second. Obviously, you make a very good point about the money side of things. It isn't an overly excessive move, I'd say. It is, if an amateur player, it's probably quite expensive, but for your your pro player or your semi-pro player, or your players that attend LANs and actually win, I think you'll easily make back the money you're going to have to spend to transition, because obviously the main costs of transitioning would be a PlayStation 4, a SCUF controller maybe, or some modded controller, and then maybe a headset, depending on what headset you use at the moment. So, but with the amount of money that's pumped into esports and Call of Duty at the moment, I feel like and more organizations coming into the scene, I feel as if though you'd easily make your money back. Do you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I don't think you'd even almost look at it as an investment so much as you would. It's just kind of, if you want to stay with competitive Call of Duty, it's just kind of a given that you'd have to fall that out, especially if you want to play at the top level. Obviously, the way that it's currently organised is the Call of Duty Championships are very heavily interlinked with MLG, very heavily interlinked with Gfinity. Yeah. But, perhaps some players who don't see themselves being a part of that might just say, I'll just stay with the Xbox. And no doubt some organisers will just kind of remain with that console. I mean, as we were talking before this podcast even kicked off, it won't have been cheap for those organisers to buy all those consoles in bulk.
Precisely. Yeah, we talked about this on the show, and talked about how, Amateur Pro recently forked out on quite a lot of Xboxes. Now, do they have the money to now fork out on some PS4s if all of a sudden, Activision are right, we've got to switch over to PS4, they are the lead console now? Because, these organisations aren't, picking money off trees. And another question that arises is, where do they sell the Xboxes they have to? If they're only doing PS4 LANs, where do the Xboxes go? Because the only real place I can see it going is either, a FIFA community or a Halo community, and I feel like they don't have an overall demanding need for Xboxes. So it's a case of, is that kind of money down the drain?
Yeah, I don't like I kind of know the guys at Am2 Pro, but I've not really gone into detail with them. I don't really know how many consoles they own. I'm pretty sure that multiplayer own quite a large number.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're big enough to shoulder that loss.
Oh, yeah,
and as you said, there's other consoles and stuff. There's other games that they can use it on.
But for these amateur organisations, it's make or break in a way.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I don't really know the financing behind Am2 Pro. When I recently left EGL. Yeah. But when I was with EGL, we hadn't actually bought any consoles at that point because there was kind of, because there'd not been an event, there was no need to fork out on them.
There was no plans, obviously, to get any because obviously you didn't have any events in the
No, so we just had like a minimum number that we needed to get by. But it might be that Am2 Pro have got a deal with Xbox, or it might be that they can afford PlayStation, especially since PlayStation have not really been involved with Call of Duty. They might, themselves put their hands in the pocket and say, we want to see Am2 Pro continue to flourish in the UK. It makes sense for us to
invest into them.
Grassroots.
Obviously, it's not the first time that there's been speculation or changes actually implemented in Call of Duty. You go all the way back to COD 4. I think we're on PC. Black Ops 1. We're on PlayStation 3. So there's been transitions before, but I almost feel as if the scene is now grown so much since then that making a change would be very drastic and something that affects everyone. And obviously, you suggest that maybe we could see a split community where, as you say, Am2 Pro maybe stay on Xbox because Xbox fund them or support them, and then other organisations like ones that are linked with MLG, the likes of Gfinity and I think it's ACL down in Australia. I think they've got links with MLG as well. Maybe they move on to PS4, but as you said, we might see Xbox and PlayStation actually get in contact with organisers and say, no, we want you on, playing our console. Do you potentially see, Sony or, Microsoft actually contacting organisers of events and saying, hey, we'll give you a discount on XYZ Xboxes? Because obviously MLG recently tweeted out saying, or I think it was Sundance that tweeted out saying that they bought 1,000 PlayStations. Whether this is true or not, we don't know, but if it is to be true, that that's a lot of money. I think at retail price, that's a good over $300,000. So do you reckon we will get to a point where we'll see Sony and Microsoft actually turn around and give discounts to organisers to host events on their consoles?
Well, it wouldn't be the first time, put it that way. Okay. Picking up on a point that you said before, that there hasn't previously been a transition period really in Call of Duty. Obviously there was PC Call of Duty, there's been PlayStation tournaments held on Call of Duty.
Yeah, indeed.
But for the most part, there's always been Xbox since Call of Duty 4. And there's been very few players who've had to make that transition, except for the PlayStation guys who are maybe perhaps a bit starved of competition. So this would be something new, but as I said, it might be that PlayStation kind of want to prove a point. They want to maybe pick up, do things differently to how Xbox have done things, and perhaps people like Am2 Pro. I'm purely speculating here. Maybe the likes of UGC in America, they might be people who they target and say, we like what you're doing. We want you to do more events. Here's either discount or here's some Xboxes. Here's some PlayStations, for example. And the thing is, there are agencies that these companies work with who, provide consoles and that kind of thing. So it might just be that they cover the cost for those agencies to be there over a weekend and stuff.
Maybe even just rent out the Xbox. You say, look, we'll give you them for this event, and then we take them back or something over, just to help them out on that front. But
exactly, that's what I mean. That there are agencies that almost act as a third party for example. I don't know if they do for PlayStation. I assume so. Quite a well-known one in the UK called NJ Live, and they basically provide consoles for tournaments and but also expos and things like that. So it's not out of the realms of possibility that
there's quite a few options. In other words, organisers, if there was suddenly a change to PlayStation, it's not all doom and gloom. There is kind of ways of getting around it, or these third-party organisations, as you say.
If the console manufacturers are willing to get involved, I mean, at the end of the day, they might turn a blind eye to it and think, we've got enough with the champs, that's enough, because,
that's true.
It's quite expensive to put on we're looking at, it's $1 million prize fund, but you add all the marketing and all the, the players getting to the events and all the other bits, you're probably looking at double that to put it all on. So
easily,
it's not a cheap tournament to run, but so it really depends on what their agenda is.
Yeah, this kind of spirals into what I next wanted to talk about. Obviously, you talk about COD champs. Say, hypothetically, Xbox were to, terminate their marketing deal, there's rumours about it being, 3 years and ending this year. We really don't know. We can only speculate. Say Sony do pick up the slacks. What really do they have to do to kind of just echo what Microsoft have already been doing? Because obviously they've been putting on the $1 million tournament. They've been, promoting Call of Duty Esports. So is there anything, Sony can do to kind of, echo that or do it any better?
Again, I'm speculating here. It's stuff that I, loosely know, and I can't say categorically this is correct. But as far as I am aware, a lot of the organisation is down to the likes of Gfinity, MLG, and Activision. So okay. I'm not actually sure how hands-on, Microsoft and Xbox are themselves with it.
So the actual marketing deal is just so
the consoles have been played on, yeah.
Precisely. But the actual nitty-gritty stuff comes down to Activision. Gfinity is a good example because obviously they've, I think, worked in partnership with Activision to make it an 18+ events for Gfinity, Masters, etc. And they've obviously, been in contact with one another and come to that conclusion because obviously Gfinity as an organisation, want to be on the good side of, the makers of the game because at the end of the day, they will provide support and, promotion, etc.
Exactly. So, with that in mind, that kind of stuff. I think, as I said, I can't say with certainty, but from what I've been led to believe, that's taken care of. And so it is a case of PlayStation just having the consoles and putting it through their social channels and stuff.
So it's just a pure marketing deal. There's no management involved of them actually dealing with that.
I might be wrong, but as far as I'm aware,
we're just speculating. This is all kind of hypothetically if so and so happens. So I mean. We really don't know, there's all these rumours, but, until, hard details come out, until Sony actually say, look, this is what's happening, we can only obviously speculate, but there's been obviously a lot of rumours, but who really knows?
I wouldn't be surprised to see, if I was personally Sony, if I was Mr. Sony, I'd be thinking to myself, I kind of want to take this away from Microsoft, they've had it for years, and so I wouldn't be that surprised if there's almost a moderate increase in the prize pool. Almost more like I can't really think of what the word is, but just to kind of say, this is a new era. It's not Microsoft anymore. We're Sony, and we're now doing a 1.5 million prize pool, for example. And that's a way of getting people's attention.
Here's a thought to give you, and you can obviously give your opinion on this. I was speaking to Melon just moments ago, and he was talking about, I asked him exactly the same question, kind of. What does Sony need to do to kind of carry on what Microsoft have been doing in terms of the COD champs and various other things they do, and he talked about maybe instead of having $1 million tournament, maybe split it into smaller prize pools, but obviously have more throughout the year because then obviously that keeps the audience retained. Because I almost feel like COD champs being in March, there's a massive climax to it, and then there's just a massive drop, and then everyone's lost enthusiasm. So do you want to comment on that?
I think I kind of agree with your point. I don't think it would fit into their agenda, and I'll explain why in a minute. But I'm with you on that because obviously this is kind of how Halo do it, or are attempting to do it. They're doing the HCS. They're into season 2 now. The first season had £250,000 prize fund, I think it was, and that concluded. And then the new season started now. And how they do it is they, support the events that are part of the that they basically add to the circuit. So imagine it was MLG and Gfinity. In this instance, they get a prize pool increase or whatever. They get behind that, and then when it comes down to it, you have a grand final, and so over the course of the year, you have 4 grand finals. So there's always something to work towards.
There's always something, ongoing. Yeah.
And I like that way of doing it. On the other hand, I don't know if it's kind of in. The current agenda for Activision, purely because the new game comes out, you get the hype for the champs.
Yeah.
So you have those initial sales, you make the sales, then you get the
basically Halo isn't a game that's going to come out year after year.
Exactly.
So they have more sustainability to actually be able to do this.
So imagine now if we were kind of midway through another season of the champs or whatever, season 2, let's say, and you started getting these Black Ops 3 trailers. If anything, it'd kind of work against it because it you'd almost firstly you've diluted your marketing pot, and secondly, it's all of a sudden you're kind of taken away from the glamour of the second season because all of a sudden it's we've got this next game coming out. Let's forget what we've already.
Let's just move on to the next game already, kind of thing.
Yeah. So I guess it kind of becomes a bit of it might not really work as part of what they're trying to achieve, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if Sony do become the main console, what they do. I think we can both agree that it'd be a massive disappointment if they showed no regards to Call of Duty Esports. But it's very apparent that I think they have interest probably. This is just my personal opinion, because obviously they're in a competitive market. It's all going to come down to their competition. They want to be ahead of Xbox, and I read somewhere on the net, I don't have the source, but they're talking about how if Call of Duty did come under Sony's wings, that would probably solidify PlayStation as for the meantime being the better console to have, because looking at actual statistics on the game. And where it's been bought and on what platforms. If we just look at Xbox One and PlayStation 4, in North America, no surprise, Xbox One Advanced Warfare has been bought more. It's been bought 2.8 million copies compared to 2.4 million in on PlayStation 4. But then the real significant factor is in Europe and the rest of the world. Rest of the world, 1.27 million copies have been sold on PlayStation 4 compared to Xbox One's just 2,300,000. So. Or 230,000, sorry. So, I don't feel like PlayStation 4 are lacking, the audience. I feel like PlayStation 4 already have an abundance of audience on their console. I just feel like this is like the step further for them for like solidifying Call of Duty on Sony, because at the moment obviously the DLC is released early on Xbox, and then you've got obviously all events run on Xbox. So at the moment when you think of Call of Duty you think of Xbox, but if they do get a marketing deal, that may change. So
it's very interesting actually, because from an Activision point of view, obviously there's been a lot more sales of PlayStation around the world. So in many ways it could boost sales if more people see, as you said, if all of a sudden Call of Duty becomes synonymous with PlayStation, there's more potential punters, I guess, for people who would buy the game who already have the console.
Another thing to point out is the fact that it's not the first time, if this does happen, that Activision and Sony have had a partnership. Obviously, the same happened with Destiny, if I'm not mistaken. It was on the PlayStation 4. They had exclusive content, so there's reason to believe that it could happen again. They've done it in the past. It seemed pretty successful from an outsider's perspective. So they're not new to kind of dealing with each other, and it'll be interesting to see. I mean, last question I kind of want to end on for yourself is, what do you personally want to see? Do you think we're better staying on Xbox or PlayStation 4?
Good question. I actually don't really think it matters that much.
Okay.
It's interesting. It'd be interesting to see how it pans out. I mean, from a very personal perspective, as somebody who barely plays anymore, the PlayStation controller
really bother you too much.
No, the PlayStation controller would be my only. If I was to get the console now, I'm not a big fan of the PlayStation controller. Obviously,
I spoke to Melon about this, and I said, would the controller be an issue? And he said, they play 7 hours a day. It wouldn't be.
Get used to it.
Yeah, exactly. But obviously, it's different people's perspectives and opinions. Some people wouldn't like it.
The fact is that the controller is like the Xbox controller was kind of more. It was designed later down the line. So the PS4 controller is actually a modified version of the original PlayStation controller, which didn't have thumbsticks until later down the line. So the shape of it means that it's not really as well built for FPS, which means you would actually sacrifice a bit of control. But then it's probably negligible, as you said, when people are playing 7 hours a day.
I mean,
but that aside, I actually don't think it would make much difference. Really, I think that people would move and adjust. Event organisers might be hindered slightly, but at the end of the day,
the community would shuffle over.
Yeah, I mean people like the likes of Anti-Pro, they've only done one tournament. It's not like the whole thing hinges on their success.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, just to touch on the controllers front, I mean, I'm sure somewhere down the line we can find a PlayStation 4 controller that's in the form of an Xbox. I'm sure something like that can come along.
My cats did that before on the Xbox 360, so
there we go. Exactly. So thank you for coming on, though. Massive thank you, Chris. I really enjoy getting your insight into if the scene did change. Next up, we're going to be talking to the Grumpy Gamer, or also known as Neil from Epsilon Esports. He's like the community manager and does marketing stuff behind the scenes for them. So we'll be back in just a second. For the last part of the show, we have another special guest in the form of Neil, or the Grumpy Gamer on Twitter. You may know him. He is the general manager behind Epsilon, if I'm not mistaken?
Community and marketing.
Community and marketing. And basically, that pretty much sums up what you do. Obviously, you're behind the scenes guy at Epsilon Esports. You do a lot of the day-to-day jobs that you're doing behind any organisation. And obviously, today we're going to be talking about the PlayStation scene and whether or not a Sony deal for marketing or whatever it be will basically influence Call of Duty Esports. And obviously the reason we wanted to get you on is for the perspective of an organisation. I think a lot of people may or may not know if it actually will affect an organisation. So just starting off, let's say hypothetically the PlayStation scene was to become the favouritised console for Activision and Call of Duty in the future. Do you see this having any real significant effect on SONY Esports?
I suppose the real simplistic answer would be no. But to expand upon that, realistically, there's two facets to this. The easy answer, as in, will it have an effect?
Yeah.
The question also could be expanded out as, when will it have an effect? I think from our point of view, maybe we're looking a little bit from the outside as an org, because we don't know what's going on internally with Activision.
Yeah, because obviously you don't get an update as and when things happen. You kind of just get told when the public get told.
Yeah, and from that point of view, we personally would be surprised if it happened really that quickly. It would probably have to be some sort of transitional phase whereby you would maybe have some PlayStation events, some Xbox events. We as an organisation would be exceedingly surprised if it happened en masse, as is being rumoured, in terms of
it's all rumours, but we don't know what's going to happen.
Thousands of PlayStation 4s and stuff like that. I would be surprised, or we would be surprised as an organisation if it happened that quickly. But yeah, in terms of would it affect us as an organisation? No, there is an easy answer to that, and it is no. It wouldn't unduly affect us, really in the long term at all. In the short term, possibly not. There may be some teething issues with consoles for players and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But no, in the long run, the answer is no. It really is, as an organisation, it wouldn't affect us unduly.
Interesting. I personally have spoken to a lot of people. A lot of people have said that if the scene was to switch over, a lot of people would maybe think about competing in another game. We don't know what's going to happen. As you said yourself, you don't get informed as and when updates happen. You have to wait as the public have to wait as well. But I guess the next thing I kind of wanted to ask you is maybe not for Epsilon's perspective, because obviously Epsilon, I don't want to say have a good financial backing, but if just all of a sudden the scene did switch over to PS4, I'm pretty sure the players, the likes of SONY, Josh, and Madcat could easily just buy a PlayStation 4 and transition over. But from the amateur kind of perspective, an amateur organisation where they have a full Xbox roster, do you see this being a pretty big hurdle to get over? Do you think this is a big complication for teams that maybe don't have as much funding?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah, I mean, for the scene as a whole, I could see it being, again, this is something that, again, we can't really comment on because we don't know how deep the guys, the companies involved are getting into it. But you would like to think they would give some thought into that area, because it's not just about the high-end competition. Of course, there's much more to it than that, and it goes a lot deeper than that. And yeah, I mean, so from our point of view, like you say, the guys themselves would easily be able to afford. I'm not even sure if some of the guys already don't own PlayStations, but it really wouldn't be a problem for them. And certainly from an organisation point of view, things like sponsors. I mean, for example, all of our sponsors that we have that have some sort of connotation to console have some crossover between PlayStation and Xbox. So again, getting equipment for players and stuff like that from sponsors wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, but obviously, for the amateur team, it may be a bit more of a struggle.
It would be a huge problem because they don't have that backing.
Exactly.
They would, at the very least, have to swap consoles. But then you've got things like SCUF controllers,
precisely.
peripherals. It would be a massive change, and okay, there may already be teams at a very much lesser level. Let's say clans, to use an older phrase, already existing on PlayStation. But would they be at a level that the Xbox guys are at the moment? Probably not. So at the very least, that's going to take some time to either guys to switch over to PlayStation, or for the people who are already playing PlayStation to make up the slack to compete at a higher level. Either way, you're going to get a massive carryover there of competition not catching up.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like you said it pretty well. Obviously, the PlayStation 4 community, they do have some tournaments themselves, but obviously, I think we can all kind of agree that the majority of the Call of Duty competitive community is based on Xbox, and that's, you know, not being biased in any way. It's very evident because of the fact that that's where the money's at. You know, players are going to want to be where the money's at. You're not going to be on PlayStation 4 where you've got the odd, you know, $100 tournament, where you've got Xbox where you've got, you know, 50k tournament coming up for ESWC, etc. So it makes sense. You know, any old person would do it. You know, everyone's not a fool. They're on Xbox for a reason. It's where the money's at. Last thing I want to ask you is obviously, if Sony do say get a marketing deal, is there anything they can do from an organisation's perspective to help you guys out? Is there anything that you've thought about and said, hey, if they did this, this could maybe help us out, or is there not really anything that they can do anymore?
No, I mean, I think going back to what I said right at the start in terms of the time scale in it switching over,
it needs to be a transition period, not just
straight
away.
Transitional period, and I think to give orgs the time to, and certainly at a lower level as you discussed, but even with ourselves, time to adjust to that as any switchover goes, but also then to just support, if and when it does happen, to support the scene as much as possible.
Yeah.
You know, interaction with the players, the organisations, the event coordinators. You know, Xbox have done that really well in conjunction with Activision, and really that would be, I'm not going to say a tough act to follow, but it would be a prerequisite that they would have to go through in terms of carrying on that support.
Indeed.
And even trying to better anything that's gone before, because as we've always been saying over the past few months, you know, we want esports to grow.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Specifically for esports. So, you know, any support that, you know, Sony or would give to the scene if it happened would have to be seen as growth.
Most definitely.
Above what Xbox are doing, because, you know, let's say it does stay with Xbox, I'm damn sure they've got stuff in the background where they want to grow it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I feel like PlayStation can't just, or Sony even, can't just pick up the slack and then not deliver on any, you know, COD champs or this, that and the other. I feel like they need to do, you know, the same as what Microsoft have been doing, if not more. You know, if they can continue this $1 million tournament, that's really good. Maybe have it, you know, situated in a better timing zone, because obviously at the moment it's a bit, you have it at the middle of the year and then there's a massive like decline. But, you know, it's stuff like that that maybe could be looked at. But I'm sure if Sony do take up, you know, the reins, I'm sure they'll do a good job. You know, I wouldn't have thought Activision would sell marketing deals to the likes of Sony unless they had a really good, you know, deal and contract in place for them to, you know, implement stuff for not only Call of Duty as a casual competitive player or whatever it be, but just in general to grow it in both the competitive community and in just the general casual community as well. Sadly, we've come to the end of the show. It's been a bit of a long one, to say the least. You know, a massive thank you again to everyone that we've had on. You know, massive thank you to you guys at home if you've, you know, sticked around this long to actually watch it. We just kind of wanted to summarise, you know, what we talked about, because, you know, there's a lot to take in. You know, as always, you know, use the hashtag, the Hubdate, to let us know what you thought about, you know, everything we've discussed. You know, if you've got an opinion, use the hashtag. We literally look at everything you put on, so you use the hashtag. We will look at your comment and acknowledge it, etc. So do let us know. The last thing we kind of wanted to leave you on is, you know, the fact that, you know, Activision and Sony have worked together before, you know, on Destiny, so it could happen again. Obviously, as well, it's something that, you know, if it did happen, it's very evident from talking to Melon that you know, it wouldn't be a drastic change. You know, they would have to obviously adapt, but it's not something that would be, you know, perceived to be really bad, I guess. And also, you know, speaking with the likes of, you know, Grumpy Gamer from Epsilon, obviously they feel like it wouldn't really affect the organisation at all. So, you know, maybe the move isn't as big of a problem, but I mean, do let me know using the hashtag, the Hubdate. Let me know what you want to see if Sony were to get the marketing deal. And this is pretty much going to conclude this episode, guys. So a massive thank you to, as I said, to everyone that we've had on this show. We had 4 guests on, a pretty awesome show, you know, a great outing, personnel from all around the esports scene. And my name's been Tommy. You know, you can check out my links down below. I post YouTube videos about Call of Duty on a regular basis. Do stuff for the sticks. We have our own podcast called The 51 that we talk about Call of Duty as well. So if you want to check me out, anything, it's all links down below. It links to, you know, all the stuff we've really been talking about, and you know the rumours and stuff should be down below as well. But this is probably going to do for this episode, guys. We'll see you next week with episode number 4 of the Hubdate. Not sure what the title and what we're going to talk about yet, but it will get tweeted out as soon as we know. But as always, guys, I will see you later, and as always, have a good day.